name is John Chenoweth. I am Dean of the College of Business and Economics. Good afternoon. Thank you for attending today's session. This is our kickoff for Business Ethics Week, an event that we hold every single year, so put it down on your calendar for next year as well. I'll introduce today's guest speaker in a second, but just to remind you, we have similar events the next 3 days. So tomorrow we have a speaker at 2:30. On Wednesday we have a speaker at 2 o'clock. And on Thursday, we have another speaker at 2:30. They're all here, right? Yes. All here, so please attend if you can. We hold this event every year because business ethics is a critical piece of what we do. It's incorporated in our mission statement for the college. So make sure that you have a skill set. And in fact, in our mission statement, it talks about being able to operate in a global environment and to operate responsibly. And then we actually call out ethics as one of the key components of the things we try to instill in our students along the way, along with leadership and critical thinking. And so this is an important event for us. It's a critical skill set for you to learn as you go through the process. And these speaker events allow you to hear some war stories and other things that go on in the so-called real world. Ethical situations that arise and how you might deal with those and how others have dealt with those. So again, please attend if you can the next 4 days and let other folks know about the event. If you are here attending because of a class and you need to make sure that you get signed in, if you're just coming in now, that's fine. Just make sure before you leave that you get yourself signed in. Is there a sheet floating around as well? So that'll keep working its way around the room. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome Paul Sara. Paul is an alumni of this fabulous institution and business program. He has served in the industries for almost 40 years now, serving as the president of Clear Channel Outdoor, which you've probably seen as you drive around the state. Served in that capacity with the Milwaukee division for a long time, and recently was swept away to work for a commercial roofing company as their vice president of sales as they try to grow into the Wisconsin space a bit more. So he's been doing that for 2 years now, I think, right? And so he's been speaking. He's been coming to speak in this series now for 8 years. What he has to say is important and interesting, and so I will let him take it away. Thank you, Paul.
Good. Thank you, Dean Chenoweth. I appreciate being here. This is my 8th year. And I just want to thank Dr. Parbatia for the invite as well, and Emily Grunwald. I want to commend this university for sponsoring Business Ethics Weeks. I think it's more critical than ever that we discuss the topic of ethics. Companies need rising revenues, they need rising profits. They need good people to make for a successful organization, successful company. You need all those. But I want to say that there's probably nothing that will bring down a company quicker than unethical behavior. You can see corporations missing on the bottom line or the top line, and then maybe their stock may be affected by a couple of points. But when you get a charge of unethical behavior, like we've seen over the years, and I'm going to really get into that, it can have devastating effects. And what I try to do is talk about past companies and talk about things that have happened currently or in the past year or two. And my point being that things sometimes never change. And when we conduct our companies or our affairs unethically, there's consequences. There's always consequences. Either consequences for the corporation, consequences for the shareholder, or consequences for the employees. So let me start. Again, I'm pleased to be here at Whitewater and been given the opportunity to speak about a very, very important topic, and that's ethics. It's so important that we have the discussion of conduct and ethics in our universities to advance and emphasize the importance of positive ethics. and put integrity, humility, and courage and respect for one another and put it into action on each of you as each of you enter the workforce and become the future workers, managers, and CEOs in business or wherever your careers take you. Each of us has a responsibility to act with integrity and honesty in all that you do. A factor or factors as to why this is occurring in business today is the highly competitive nature of business today. It's a global economy, and not every country conducts their business affairs the same way. It comes down to survival of the fittest. Get it done no matter what. We can't allow the other guy to beat us to the market. It's become a world of who can implement smoother, innovate better, and execute faster. Only the best will survive and thrive. Those who don't will become irrelevant or die. We'll discuss some recent examples of unethical behavior in corporate America and some older examples. Bottom line, sometimes we never learn. We are a nation governed by laws that were created to keep order in the country for the purpose of preventing chaos from occurring and helping to maintain a civilized society. If we violate those laws, we pay a price. For instance, if we steal or shoplift, we get caught, you may pay a fine or even go to jail. At the very least, you will have a criminal record, and it may be difficult to get a job or retain a job. If we cause physical harm to someone, you'll probably get arrested, fined, or possibly jailed. If we drink and drive and get pulled over by a policeman, you'll probably most likely be charged with an OWI. If you harm someone as a result of drinking and driving or texting, the penalties will include fines and jail, and even worse, knowing that it can cause injury or death to something that could have been avoided. I can go on and on with examples of breaking the law, but I'll stop there. I think you get my point. The other thing too, ladies and gentlemen, after this, or even if you have a question, raise your hand, and please, following my talk, please ask questions. It's been very, very interactive the past 8 years, and just feel free to ask any questions. But if what you do that doesn't necessarily, but what if we do something that necessarily doesn't break the law? Imagine a world with no ethical boundaries, a world with which not breaking the law, but doing things because we feel it's not going to hurt anyone or it's no big deal. For example, cheating on an exam, no one's going to know, I need to pass the course. Fudging numbers at work so the boss won't fire me, or I can get a bigger bonus at the end of the year, or pay for a movie and go to 3, or do shoddy work as a contractor, or tell someone they need something repaired at a high cost when it only needed minor repair or no repairs, or shred documents like we've seen in government and business so no one will find out what I or someone else did wrong. We've seen recent examples of executives and their employees compromising ethics only to gain bigger profits. What about automaker Volkswagen's diesel emissions scandal, which has been dubbed diesel dupe or Dieselgate? The EPA found that many VW cars being sold in America had a defeat device or software in diesel engines that could detect when they were being tested, changing the performance accordingly to improve results. VW has since admitted cheating emissions tests, and in the U.S., about 11 million cars worldwide are fitted with the so-called defeat device. What was VW's response? We totally screwed up. Our company had broken the trust of our customers and the public. It's still unclear who made what and when. Leadership failed. While shareholders have taken a beating in share price, the real tragedy is the number of people who were involved and violated the trust of so many people. Talk about a total disregard of ethical boundaries. In all fairness, I'm not sure many people were pressured into capitulating or surrendering into the scheme. But ladies and gentlemen, when it comes down to making choices, the right choices in life, sometimes the final decisions rest with you. Volkswagen paid out $14.7 billion to settle claims, and even something more important, Think of the lives that they put in danger. What if every automaker did what VW did? How many people would cost lives for their actions? So it's sometimes more than just money. Then there's Wells Fargo. It's alleged that more than 2 million bank accounts this past year or credit cards were opened or applied for without customers' knowledge or permission between May 2011 and July 2015. Some 5,300 employees, roughly 1% of the workforce, engaged in this activity where customers received a product they did not want or request. The root cause of their sales practice and goals lies with a distorted sales culture and performance management system. Bottom line, top management turned a blind eye to these sales practices. Many employees were fired, including top management, and most of all, the reputation of a once well-respected financial institution. Once again, leadership failed. Employees lost their jobs, consequences of ethical behavior. Then there is Milan Labs, maker of the EpiPen. About 15 million Americans depend on this vital drug to quickly administer antidotes to severe allergies reactions. What would cost a family in other major nations about $50 per dose for this life-saving medicine now costs $600 here. Milan's price gouging had nothing to do with costs of research and development or supply and demand. This obscene price hike is greed, pure and simple, extorting Americans who depend upon the drug. Milan EpiPen episode has all the familiar hallmarks of greed and unethical behavior. It started at the top. The CEO's salary rose from $2 million per year to nearly $19 million per year following the price gouging. Since then, the price has come down dramatically, but the reputation of the company has been irreparably damaged. Wells Fargo, Volkswagen, Milan Labs are examples of total disregard of ethical boundaries. In all fairness, I'm sure many were very pressured into surrendering into these schemes. However, ladies and gentlemen, it comes down to making the right choices, as I mentioned before, in life. Sometimes the final decisions rest with you. Sally Krawcheck, CEO of Corporate Bytes, says, if it comes down to your ethics versus a job, choose ethics. You can always find another job. Wells Fargo, Milan Labs, and Volkswagen, again, are examples of greed and unethical behavior to the extreme. Somehow the culture of these companies lost its way. What was leadership thinking? The loss to shareholder value, loss of trust as a result of unethical behavior and choices is just plain sad. For some leaders, a code of business conduct and ethics are just words without meaning. We'll look at some companies that were in the spotlight several years ago, probably when you were maybe 8, 9 years old, who ignore the rules of good business conduct and ethics. Do we ever learn? It never ends. Unless our business leaders and employees follow the rules and guidelines of their corporate business ethics code, they could end up just like Enron. You were probably too young when Enron violated their code of ethics. But my point that I want to make is that whether it's 2 years ago, 1 year ago, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, or 15 years ago when this happened, it never stops. We never seem to learn our lesson. Enron, once a giant energy trading company out of Houston, Texas, natural gas and electric utilities company based in Houston, Texas, employed 21,000 people by mid-2001. Before it went bankrupt, fraudulent accounting behavior techniques allowed by their leaders, Kenneth Lay, now deceased, and Jeff Skilling, not sure if he's still serving a jail sentence, I think he just got out, ruined 21,000 lives and caused their share price to plunge to 30 cents, ultimately to zero. Then there was Worldcom, led by Bernie Ebbers, another accounting scandal that created billions in illusory earnings. This is a company that had more than $107 billion in assets, far surpassing those of Enron. It improperly accounted for more than $3.8 billion in expenses. Result, bankruptcy. The largest U.S. bankruptcy case at the time. Once again, employees' lives disrupted or ruined and shareholder value completely lost due to unethical behavior. About the same time, there was Tyco. CEO Dennis Kozlowski and former chief Mark Schwartz were sentenced up to 25 years in prison for stealing hundreds of millions of dollars from the company. How about a company closer to home, Cost Corporation? Their VP of Finance and secretary went on a $31 million shopping binge that was unfortunately not discovered by auditors. That's unbelievable. Almost sunk the company. She was just recently released from jail, but the problems that it caused for costs was unbelievable. Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. Their actions drove so deeply into the subprime lending back in 2008 and other risky mortgages that there was no way out when the real estate bubble burst in 2008. And then there were the banks that were willing to lend to anyone that had a heartbeat. No questions asked. How much do you want? And yes, part of the blame must go to the consumer, who wanted a piece of the American pie by any possible means. Consequences, ladies and gentlemen. The story never ends well when good intentions are compromised. When business conduct and ethics are ignored, winner take all, ethics be damned, are ignored. We all paid the price and are still paying the price of the financial meltdown of 2008 caused by greed. The irresponsible behavior of those leaders from Enron, Tyco, Worldcom brought down billion-dollar companies, ruined employees' lives. 401ks became worthless because so many people had their 401ks tied up in company stock, and shareholder value lost. When a culture goes from excellence based on a strong code of ethics, integrity, to a culture based on self-gain, profit at any cost, one in which the end justifies the means, I guarantee you the ending will not be pretty. There was an example that I've given several times that I personally experienced. Several years ago, I got a call from the CEO of our company, and he said, Paul, would you meet me at this hotel, jump on a plane, you might have to be there for a couple of weeks. So I said, yes, I'll meet you at the hotel. And he says, I'll tell you what happened. So get off the plane, meet him at the hotel. We're driving to this particular branch, and being with the company for 38 years, you get to know a lot of people. Evidently what happened is that someone was cooking the books, changing the numbers, and the other three people, his boss, a county manager, and the new general manager, knew about it but didn't do anything about it. So we arrive at the plant, and there's about maybe 150 people at this plant, and many of them I do know. And the president of the company was addressing what had happened, and you could see in everybody's eyes the disappointment, what happened, and how disappointed they were in the people that behaved badly. They knew these people. Some of these people were their people's bosses. Cost the company a lot of money. Cost the reputation of the company for a while. Took several years for that to be repaired. Rather than staying there for a couple of weeks, I was there for almost 3 months. And the price that it pays, bad behavior, is just really heartbreaking. So we're at the hotel, and one of the gentlemen who was terminated wanted to meet with the president, and I happened to be there with him. And he looked at John, and he said, John says, I didn't do anything, And he says, John, it's not what you did, it's what you didn't do. You knew. You were the finance manager. You had access to the books. You knew what was going on, and you didn't say anything. So inaction can be as bad as someone actually committing the crime too. And this didn't go on for a year or two. This went on for several years. I'm what you call a stock aficionado wannabe. Emphasis is on the wannabe. I invest in stocks as more of a hobby or pastime instead of goal of making a ton of money in the market. I'm no Warren Buffett, that's for sure. I've done pretty well, but curiosity about different companies and what they do, how they get started, how long they've been in business, what makes them tick is really what interests me. I really try to examine a business prior to making my commitment. I read Barron's, I read Wall Street Journal, I do research, I listen sometimes to CNBC, I do research on the internet, I read their annual reports. They help me, sometimes they just help to put me to sleep. But when reading the annual reports, I look at their 5-year annual revenues, expenses, their EBITDA, I look at their competition, I look at their 10K and innovation outlook. These are all things an investor should look at prior to making a financial commitment to any stock. What you don't see in the financials is a line called business ethics performance. You can't quantify that. No company goes into depth or wants to go into any depth about how moral they are or honest they are. It's just assumed that management is trustworthy and management will always do the right thing. They will choose honest practices when running their respective business. In conference calls to analysts, there is an absence of any discussion of code of conduct or behavior until something happens. The discussion is usually centered on the performance of the past quarter and future performance. Ladies and gentlemen, the example I gave earlier, Volkswagen, Wells Fargo, Milan Labs, Enron, Worldcom, Tyco, and Cost are just a few examples of destructive behavior. Yes, studying a company's financials, their competition, innovation are extremely important when considering to invest in a company. Nothing will bring down a company faster than corruption, the compromise of business practices and ethics. You can fix performance, you can cut expenses, you can fix the product, you can fix margins, but you can't fix bad behavior. Bad business conduct and ethics is in most cases quick enough to save a company. I place trust, a strong code of business conduct and ethics at the top of my list when grading a company, when hiring a prospective employee, when considering someone for a promotion. Each of you should consider a strong code of business ethics when you're seeking employment or a career. I want to talk a little bit about social responsibility. There are companies that are good examples of good behavior. Let's talk about the good side of ethics in business, one that focuses on the many things that good businesses do right. I refer to that as social corporate responsibility. A strong code of business ethics is about choosing right from wrong, obeying the law. It's that and more. It's about how we treat others in the community. It's about how we treat our fellow employees. It's about what we give back to the community. It's about respecting the environment or environmental ethics. Examples of companies demonstrating good business ethics. Starbucks, it created CAFE, C-A-F-E practice, a set of guidelines to achieve product quality, economies, accountability, social responsibility, and environmental leadership. Ben & Jerry's. Ben Cohen and Jerry Greenfield started Ben & Jerry's Foundation. They set up an extraordinary rate of giving to charitable organizations, donating a full 7.5% of pre-tax profits. They strive to show a deep respect for human beings inside and outside their company and for the communities in which they live. Tom's Shoes, founders Blake McCoskey started Tom's Shoes. For every pair of shoes sold, one pair would be donated to a child in need. In 4 years, Tom's Shoes donated more than 400,000 shoes. Warby Parker glasses, another example of giving back to the people in need. About 1 billion people around the world don't have any kind of access to glasses. Warby Parker has distributed more than 250,000 pairs of glasses to people in need in the developing world. Public service. If you get the chance, and I encourage each of you to commit to doing some public service in your lives, it'll make you feel great by giving back to your community and helping others. I guarantee it will make a positive difference in your lives and the community. Several years ago, I had the privilege of serving on the Capital Campaign Steering Committee to raise funds to double the size of the Ronald McDonald House in Milwaukee. We completed the expansion about 4 years ago, and now the Ronald McDonald House is able to accommodate twice as many people. It's a great feeling. America. It has a culture of excellence. It is a country that provides the means for anyone to succeed if they really want to. Excellence and opportunity. These are qualities that separate us and our economic system from the rest of the world. It's one at any cost, by any means, where the means justifies the end, that crosses a line from ethical culture to a corrupted culture. There can be a fine balance. It doesn't take much to tilt the scales. We saw that in a few examples I discussed earlier in my talk. One individual, one bad apple can do enormous damage to an institution. Stephen Covey wrote a book a few years ago called The Speed of Trust, the one thing that changes everything. In the book he states, trust is so basic to business that it is rarely discussed in an analytical and accessible way. The more trust within a company, the faster it can move with lower costs. Think of the adverse impact 9/11 had on at the time. Again, many of you are probably very young when that happened. The cost of air travel, longer lines, and more security because of the damage it did to trust. Long lines and security are still with us today. Steve Covey goes on to say in his book, without integrity, you have no foundation on which to place trust. Covey defines integrity as being honest, telling the truth, and leaving the correct impression. Beyond honesty, integrity requires 3 things. Congruence. Behavior consistent with your values inspires trust. Humility. What is right has to be more important than what is being right. And courage. When the right action is hard, integrity requires courage. Trust is so integral to our relationships that we often take it for granted. Again, trust is so integral to our relationships that we often take it for granted. And this is a quote from Christopher Reeves, a Superman character who tragically passed away back about 10 years ago as a result of a fatal spinal cord injury. He writes, "Our greatest human challenge is to behave according to our belief, to do the right thing, to practice what we preach, hold yourself to high standards, and continually evaluate the image you see in the mirror. It will build your character. Respect, treat others with dignity, and make sure your behaviors are respectful. It will make you a person of quality. Courage, follow your conscience instead of following the crowd. Integrity, choose rightness over what is easy or convenient." We all have the little voice inside us that guides us. If we shut out all the noise and clutter from our lives and listen to that voice, it will tell us to do the right thing. One of my personal heroes and boss, who eventually became CEO of Clear Channel Outdoor, a wonderful man. He literally wrote the book on ethics. It's called Integrity, It's All You've Got. He wrote that back around 2007, 2008. He's an individual who rose to the top and also hit rock bottom, but never forgot the true meaning of ethics. Carl was president of Combined Communications, the largest owner of TV, radio, outdoor, and newspaper in the late 70s. He was president of Columbia Pictures, board member of Pabst Brewery, one of 40 founding fathers of Phoenix, Arizona. University of Arizona Business School is renamed after him. School of the College of Management, founder of the Fiesta Bowl, founding investor of the Phoenix Suns. He developed the largest publicly owned convenience store chain, about 4,641 Circle K stores in 32 states. Then Circle K went bankrupt, and so did he. He never gave up, stayed focused, regrouped, formed Eller Media Company, and later sold his company to Clear Channel Communications, which is now known as iHeartMedia. In his book, he says, I'm going to read this here. In his book, he says, honesty is a business person's most important asset. Nice people may not always finish first, but honest ones do, mainly because honesty creates trust, the lifeblood of all enduring human relationships, whether in business or anything else. And what makes honesty and trust possible is practice, unfailing repetition, also known as integrity. The ability to stay true to yourself without compromising your values. Stick to your guns. Whether you win or lose, behave with integrity. It will give you the richest payoff possible in life. The inner peace of the honest person, the happiness that comes with knowing you'll never be ashamed to face yourself in the mirror. And he writes in this book to me, he says, Paul, remember, always surround yourself with the people of flawless integrity. It's very important. In conclusion, I have a quote from William Clement Stone. He's a great businessman and philanthropist. Have courage to say no. Have the courage to face the truth. Do the right thing, because it is right. These are the magic keys to living your life with integrity. Thank you. Praveen, Dr. Parvati, I also want to share with you something we did a few years ago here at the university. It was called Leap Year, and there were about 3 of us who shared, each offered our perspective on employment in our respective parts of the country, in particular how educators can best prepare our students here at Whitewater, and what our students here at Whitewater can do to prepare for whatever's coming next in a rapidly changing world economy. And I'd just like to share maybe 10 points with you. We all kind of shared our advice with students at that year. We did a simul broadcast with Cal State that year. And I just want to read, I think there's like 10 pieces of advice here that I want to share with you. Be like Apple or Amazon. Innovate, reinvent yourself. Invest in constantly educating yourself. Make yourself relevant. Stay in tune with ever-changing process systems, technology changes, self-development classes. Your first job will probably not be your last job, but it may have a lot to do with determining your career path. I had a gal at one of our offices, and she was a photographer, and she wanted something bigger than that. And she really, really worked hard to demonstrate that she wanted to be the marketing manager. Well, bottom line is that eventually she did become the marketing manager. Not only did she want it, but she demonstrated how to do the job, and she worked very hard to attain that position. So you've got to express your interest to people. People can't read your mind, but you have to show them, you have to demonstrate to them what you really want, what you really care for, what your passion is, what your love is. Pursue career choices early on. Attend job fairs. Ask questions to job fair employers. Network. You may not find the career choice you want, but it will allow you to inquire. You never know what you get. You'll never know what you get out there. There is a great skill sets needed, but going unfilled. So these job fairs are terrific. They're there are so many different occupations that are going unfilled because people really don't maybe have an interest until you go there and attend it and talk to these individuals about what they do. Be surprised. Think global. Attend a semester overseas if you can, if it's possible. My son was fortunate enough to attend a semester in London. It had 15 young adults in his class, a very, very diverse background. These people spoke 2 to 4 different languages from all over the world. A global approach to learning offers a diverse background to a prospective employer. Funny thing about it is he found out who his competition was. It wasn't just here, it was the world. These are people that were not only smart, but they knew different languages. So it kind of opened his eyes, realizing what he had to do. Community involvement, volunteer outreach. Join a service organization, a community organization. Do charitable work. Get back to the community. Start young. You're never too early to start. You have to tell a story about yourself when you're looking for a job. Otherwise, you are not unique. It's what makes you stand out from the crowd. It also is the right thing to do. Great networking tool. I've met more people outside our organization and learned more from those people outside the organization than I did inside our organization because it gives you a different perspective on things. They tell you the truth. And you hear things that you just don't hear in your organization. So that's the great thing about, doing public service and charitable work. Not only is it the right thing to do, but you really learn from others and you really get back to the community. Jeff Jarris, former CEO of Manpower, says being a lifelong learner is crucial for employees. Every few years, you need to go back to universities for classes to brush up on their skills, to learn new things. If you can't embrace lifelong learning, your job will end before you want it to end. Communication and writing skills, technology. Great leaders speak and write well. Twitter, texting, Instagram, Snap, and emails don't take the place of good writing and communication skills. When you're looking for business leaders, I don't have to tell you, technology is and will continue to play a larger role in everything we do. Keep learning. LinkedIn profiles. I use it all the time. Matter of fact, I just made a presentation last week to a large commercial brokerage company, and happens to be an individual that we want to do business with. Well, he was at the presentation, and we linked with each other on LinkedIn last night. So he knows about me, I know about him. It's a great way to learn about somebody or them to learn about you. It tells and informs the world about you. Accept change and expect change. Roll with the punches. If you can't adapt when you're young, it will be difficult or impossible to accept change as you get older. Five hiring attributes Google looks for. Number 1, learning ability, the ability to process on the fly. It's not IQ, it's not expertise. It's the ability to process on the fly. Leadership. When faced with a problem and you're a member of a team, at the appropriate time, did you step in and lead? Number 3, humility and ownership. What can we do together to solve a problem? Without humility, you aren't able to learn. Number 4, collaboration and adaptability. Number 5, loving to learn and relearn. Laszlo Bock, Senior VP of Google, says, beware, your degree is not a proxy for your ability to do any job. Love that. The business world only cares about what you can do with what you know, and it doesn't care how you learned it. Last, probably the most important. Always conduct yourself with the highest integrity. When looking at companies for a career choice, look at their leadership. Look at how they conduct their business affairs. Ask questions. How do they treat people? Those are companies you want to work for. Thank you. Please, any questions?
Yes.
You're welcome.
So thank you, Paul. This was very informative as usual. And, you know, it is true we've been doing this for 10 years now, and Paul has been here for the last 8 times, and you always find some new examples. So it is so true that it keeps happening. And, you know, the good news is we haven't heard of any Whitewater students involved in any of these things yet, and that's the hope. But you know, I'd like to have you have the opportunity to ask him questions. So anyone?
Please, it could be any question. It doesn't have to do with integrity or whatever. Just if you have any general questions at all, please let me know. This should be interactive.
Yep. Anyone?
How many are seniors here? How many are, oh, okay. Are you looking for a job right now? You're not, okay. You don't want to work right after you get out, or? Oh, you do? Oh, good. Congratulations. Good.
Oh, so you're all in the accounting group and you all have jobs. Yeah,
Good.
so you're preaching to the wrong crowd then.
Yeah, good for you. Yeah, good for you. It's a very good employment picture out there right now. 8 years ago was not a very, when I first started talking here, it wasn't a very good
Yeah.
employment picture, but it really has improved.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
For the ethics piece,
Yeah, I think it's probably better for.
would you equate more ethical problems due to corporate greed or pressure from the top rather than a personal lack of ethics?
I think sometimes leaders at the top get tremendous pressure, shareholder pressure, pressure from the board of directors, and they have a choice to make, just like we all have. And if they display an ignorance of the problem, or they don't want to know, for example, this problem that we had with Wells Fargo, I think it was a case where the leader, who was John Stumpf at the time, didn't want to know. Sometimes we want to ignore something. Maybe we know something, but if we admit that we know, we got a problem. If we don't admit we have a problem, it's going to eventually get to you either way. So, yeah, it can be greed, it can be pride, it can be, it's no big deal. There's a lot of reasons why they do it. It can be money. You know, sometimes it's not always the person at the top. I gave you an example here where this person was a mid-management person who decided to do things on his own, and he paid the price for it. But, I mean, you take a look at some of these great corporations like Disney, Bob Iger. You take a look at organizations maybe like Warren Buffett or Zuckerberg or Jeff Bezos with Amazon. These people are Elon Musk or something. Hopefully nothing will ever happen in these organizations, but they live by a standard. They set the pace. They set the course. They set a culture, and companies usually rot from the top down. And if there's any kind of indication that employees get that it's okay to do this and okay to do that, it just kind of spreads like cancer, But usually, employees aren't stupid. They know what's going on. And, if you see it, whatever, just, as I say, ask questions. Look at their public service. Look at what they do for the community. Look who they are. Just don't accept the job, because it may be a job you really love, and all of a sudden, things start to break down. And, you know, you don't want that to happen when you've got a family, you've got a mortgage, you've got kids or whatever. And so you can, don't accept anything for the money. Look at the principles, look at the code that they follow. And, you know, there's a lot of vision statements that are a piece of junk out there too, you know. I mean, talk to other employees. I used to always have our employees talk to candidates. I don't want them to talk to me, but I want them to talk to 5 or 6 other people, other managers. You know, get the story from them, don't get the story from me. You know, make your decision based upon what other people feel. And I always encourage them to ask, you know, what are the, you know, is this an honest corporation? Is this a, you know, is this a company that cares about people? What do you do for the community? A lot of it is what, you know, what the company will do for the community and other people. You know, that is a real sign of character too. So those are things you can ask those questions when you're looking for a job. Very, very important. Like I say, you don't want to work for a, you know, a shoddy contractor, or you don't want to work for a company that doesn't practice a strong code of ethics or ethical behavior.
And I also have an additional question. As you being in business for 40 years, you've kind of seen different waves of people coming in and out of business. As far as millennials go, have you seen that millennials have come out of college with less ethical structure than other generations?
No, not at all.
Okay. Just you see a lot in the media of how much that our generation gets ripped on for lacking ethics.
Yeah, I have a millennial, so I know, but no, I'd say it's just the opposite. I think that you know, my generation somehow kind of lost its way or something, you know, and they became successful, and you know, I have $1 million, I want 10 million, but no, I think that most millennials that I know are terrific people. I think you guys have, I admire your ethics, at least what I've experienced. And they don't put up with that crap at all, excuse me, but they don't, you know. I don't know where they learned it. Maybe they're good parents, or maybe what they've done is they've learned from all the mistakes. You know, my examples that I talked about go back 16, 17 years. Maybe they're just tired of hearing about it, you know. And I think it's more social media, you know, better access to information allows one to hear what's going on. And, you know, how can they be that way? How can they be that way? Why are they acting that way? You know, greed. Yeah, so I have not noticed that.
Questions? Other questions? And I know Dr. Becker, the chair of the accounting department, is here. Did you want to comment or anything, Darcy? I don't mean to. What did you say? Excellent. Thank you.
So it's interesting that you comment on the millennials. You think their point where they enter the workforce, that they've become ethical people. At the university level, we struggle with ethics academically, right?
Mm-hmm.
And less mature people might think it's fine to cheat. They might see other people cheating and think that that's funny. They might think, oh, I didn't know that's something you could do. There are whole industries based around checking students' papers against papers you can buy online. So it's a pretty common, pretty prevalent thing. But we like to think that by the time the students are graduating, they've gotten to the point where they think about things like you're talking about, like there are serious consequences. Because along the way, you know, you cheat on a second grade spelling test, the teacher tells your mom or something. But eventually the consequences become more serious. Are there things that you think that universities do or could do to help accelerate that process so that students are ready sooner to accept the fact that there are ramifications for things that they do ethically? Because I think part of the problem is that students separate what they're going to do after they graduate, and they're interested in working for ethical companies and companies that do all the attributes you're talking about. But before they graduate, they're not really thinking of themselves as in that same category. until I usually think there's a corner most students go around and say, okay, I got to quit acting like a kid. Just like sometimes when people first start to drink, they drink excessively, and then they sort of gradually think, okay, I got to at least not drink before I have to take a test. And then eventually, I got to maybe not drink during the school week, and then eventually maybe drink a reasonable amount all the time, low amount all the time. Are there things the universities can do to sort of accelerate that process for kids to become a little more ethically aware and responsible earlier?
Well, I commend this university for starting this 10 years ago. I think it should be a requirement. I think, when you're a kid, you're raised on the golden rule, and you go to church services. Your parents are kind of on you, and they train you, and then they let you go, and you're exposed. In high school, you start learning some bad habits, things like that. And it's very, very difficult as a parent because they're out there with other kids. You got the social media, you got the Facebook, you got all these other things that parents don't see. So there's the outside influence that it starts before college, as you know. And that's why Junior Achievement is really a great organization. I spoke to a number of high schools, Junior Achievement, and that was at the high school level. So they do a great job addressing that problem, ethics, at that level. So it is starting before college, but I think if universities realizing that there's an ethical problem, and this university started 8 years ago. A lot of examples I gave you were from like beginning of the decade, 2000, 2001, where it just got out of control. Stock market blew up, and you had all these other companies. And I think universities started maybe to realize that we have a real problem in this society. There are going to be people that behave unethically. They think they're going to get away with it, whatever. They're not. It eventually catches up to you. I've seen it all the time. And it may not be a year, it may not be 5 years, it could be 10 years. Eventually, it catches up to you. So always conduct yourself ethically. Let me tell you, you can sleep at night. If you're going to get rich on your own talents, not in somebody else's, and making you do something. But I think colleges and universities, really, to answer your question, we have to start these things, when they first get in. When I went to Whitewater, we didn't have that. We did not have that at all, I think the world was probably just as bad then, but we hear about it more. I mean, you turn on TV, you hear about it. You go on social media, you hear about it. You have people committing crimes on Facebook. There's a lot of bad things out there. We don't talk enough about the good things that happen. But this university has done something right, and it's doing whatever it can to address the youth. That you are the future leaders of companies and service organizations.
Are organizations that companies who hire people for their first jobs, do you think that they do a good job of sort of onboarding in terms of ethical use of technology and that sort of
We tried to do that. Yeah, we really tried to ask a lot of questions. I mean, it's difficult to, when you start getting into morality and unethical, sometimes you don't know until it happens. You can really rate people's knowledge of something. Do they either know this or don't know it, or are they going to be able to learn it? Are they quick learners? Are they good in accounting? Are they good in IT? Are they whatever? It's difficult to measure, how ethical you are, and that's why I said in my talk here how important it is to make yourself unique. Try to join public service organizations. Get connected with good organizations, because that'll keep you on the right path, believe me. Because when you're doing good things, you feel good. And when you see someone not doing good things, you know right away. Because you can kind of forget about that as you get older. You know, you start getting in with the wrong crowd, whatever, and things become acceptable and laughable and all that other stuff. But that's why I always say, you know, it's more than just a resume. It's more than just your degree. It's everything else. It's, you know, what else have you done for me? Okay, you've studied globally, you've gone overseas. Oh, you belong to this organization. Tell me a little bit about that. Believe me, it works. My son was telling me an example of a friend of his who volunteered after Hurricane Katrina. And he went down there very, very often to help people. And, you know, he put that on his resume that he volunteered, you know, helping people after Hurricane, which was in 2005. And more time was spent on the interview talking about that than talking about his qualifications. The employee knew he was qualified, but he wanted to hear his story. Again, he made himself unique. And it wasn't made up, it was from the heart. So, you know, I really encourage that. You know, and I've tried to also stay on the right path by belonging to a lot of public service organizations too. I was telling Dr. Parvatiya that I met so many wonderful people. You know, you hear so many bad things. There's so many good things that are going on in this world. It's unbelievable. 1% bad and 99% good. Get hooked up with the goodness out there. Get hooked up with all the wonderful things that are happening in your community. So,
Thank you.
you know,
Any other questions? Anyone? Anyways, then I'm so grateful you kicked off the event, and you know, one of your core messages is that idea of public service and volunteering, and I think that's so important, you know, because you know, you can be as successful as you want, but if you don't find some way to give back somehow, and I think you exemplified that. So please help me in thanking Mr. Paul Sara for coming today. And
thank you for listening. Thank you.